All right, thank you, everybody. I appreciate the patience of everyone. I know we typically will start promptly at 9 a.m. on Tuesday mornings. This morning we had some things to go over and wanted to take care of that, so it's 5 after now. So if we could go ahead and take the roll, and we'll move on from there.
Representative Carter. Here. Clemens. Here. Curcio.
Here.
Garrett. Here. Griffey. Here. Ogles. Parkinson. Here. Ramsey. Here. Chairman Farmer.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Robbie, I just want to take a moment here to just let everybody know who's here and how this committee is going to operate, hopefully, this year. We always say that, and we always have some speed bumps, but we always get past them. So first off, I want to welcome everybody. This is the Civil Justice Subcommittee. I'm Andrew Farmer, and I'm going to be chairing this committee this year. I wanted to introduce some folks that are sitting around me. I have Michelle Fogarty to my left. She's going to be our attorney. So when us attorneys get confused, or any other members get confused for that matter, she's the one that gets us back on track. To my right, I have Robbie Farmer. She's my executive assistant, my secretary. She keeps me in line, keeps me places where I need to be, and it's been good for me. We're not related, if anybody wants to know that. She's a Wilson County farmer, and I'm a Sevier County farmer, but everybody accuses her of being my younger sister, so I think she's okay with that, so that's good. And to her right is Ben Voitis. He's going to be our research analyst for this year. Ben was I believe, on Commerce last year and did a really good job there, so we're happy to have him. We have our clerk. We have Jordan Nickel, who's going to be our clerk for this year. I want to thank that. And then we have an intern, Caitlin Prince, sitting back to my back left back here. Caitlin's going to be interning for Chairman Carter this year, so thank you for doing that, and hopefully you'll learn something, learn all the good things from civil justice. So we're happy to have you here. Then we also have we want to thank our Sergeant at Arms is somewhere, is always keeping us safe here and keeping us in line from that end down there. So with that said, I just want to go through a few policies that we have. Some folks may have heard these before, but I'm just going to quickly go over them. If you need a copy of these, I'll be happy to give them to any member of this committee or any individual that's out in the audience or that needs one. Committee will start promptly at 9 a.m. Sponsor of a bill must request a roll call vote prior to any vote being taken. That's House Rule 83. Once the chairman has made a ruling, only by a show of 3 committee members' hands may a roll call vote be requested. And such request must be made before the next bill is called. The amendment deadline is 10 a.m. on Mondays, the day before the amendment is to be heard in committee. We meet on Tuesdays. The deadline is 10 a.m. on Monday, day before. Voice amendments will not be entertained unless it's clerical in nature, not substance, but clerical in nature. That means we're adding a comma, some language that's not going to disrupt the purpose of the bill. So that's what clerical means. So, or a technical correction. There'll be no running debates. Members may speak only when recognized by the chair. So that means when you speak, raise your hand. I'm going to recognize you, and you can talk. Debate may be limited in time at the chairman's discretion. Members bringing guests who wish to speak must give advance notice to committee staff by 9 a.m. That's 24 hours notice the day before the committee is scheduled to meet. Paper will not be distributed in this committee. If anybody wants materials distributed to members, it must be provided to committee staff electronically prior to the meeting, so that it may be emailed to members and added to the dashboard program. These policies are waivable by the chairman at his discretion. And we're going to do everything we can to be transparent, and we're going to do everything we can to have everyone's views heard and opinions heard in this committee, and that's how we come to good policy. That's what we're here for. We're not here to be in a hurry. We're here to make good policy. So we want to stay away from knee-jerk reaction legislation. And with that said, members, you want to quickly just go down and introduce yourselves and kind of start from there. Antonio, do you want to start with that? Just go ahead and introduce yourself, let folks know where you're from, who you represent, just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get our committee started.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I condensed it down to about 25 minutes. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
No. Honestly, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, Mr. Chair, you know me. I'm always honest and straightforward. I look forward to serving on this committee with you. I think the world of you, and I'm not saying that to soften things or anything, but honestly, I do. I'm Representative Antonio Parkinson. I'm elected out of Memphis District 98. I'm a transplant to Tennessee, but I've been here for 30 years now at least, so I'm a Tennessean. I'm excited about being on this committee and excited about learning all that I can and in the civil arena, and look forward to, working with everyone. Thank you.
Very good. Representative Clemens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Ray Clemens, represent District 55, which is west and parts of South Nashville. Honored to be serving on this committee. I'm a civil litigation attorney, so I hope I know a little bit about what we're talking about sometimes, at least. And I just can't tell you how much it warms my heart to have a committee run by a Wilson County farmer. I was raised by Wilson County farmers on a Wilson County farm, so I know we're in good hands. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bob Ramsey, District 20. I have half of Blount County. I tell Jerome Moon I got the smart half, and he got the pretty half. So I'm a retired dentist, so it's so appropriate that I'm on this committee. I've been here 12 years and have fawned over the opportunity to be with these learned individuals. So we've got a lot of great people on here. Look forward to serving.
Chairman Curcio.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. My name is Michael Curcio. I represent Dixon, Hickman, and Murray County. I get to share Dixon County with Mary Littleton, and I share Murray County with Scott Sapicki. But just about 35 miles west of here is where I live, and honored to get to serve on this committee with all these learned members. So thank you for having me here.
Very good. Chairman Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Carter, and I represent District 29, which I live in Ooltewah, and it's entirely enclosed within Hamilton County. I have the 69 or 70,000, I don't know what the latest count is since we formed it. There's about 11,000 of my people live in the cities, and the rest live in rural areas. So I have an extremely rural district, which was created in 2012 by the population growth in that area. So where I live is densely populated. It is unincorporated, and everyone thinks it's a city, but it's not. So it's an odd place to be from, and I just hope that Dr. Ramsey isn't too disappointed with his buildup of being here, but we'll do the best we can do, Doc. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. Representative Garrett.
I'm Johnny Garrett. I represent the 45th District. That's Sumner County, Goodlettsville, White House, Hendersonville area. I practice law for a living, so like Representative Clemens, I hope I know a little bit about what goes on in this committee room. It can be as helpful as possible to our chairman. And on a personal note, I'm very glad and honored to serve on a committee of such distinguished folks, but I'm also very glad to see Judge Carter here. And so I'm glad that you were here. I'm glad to serve with you, and welcome. And Chairman Farmer, I look forward to serving under your leadership and guidance, and can't wait to get started.
Very good. Very good. There's fawning on that side of the room as well. Thank you for that. Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bruce Griffey. I'm elected to represent House District 75, which is Benton, Henry, and Stewart counties. I'm also an attorney. I've been practicing 30 years. I do both civil and criminal litigation, both prosecution and defense, and it's a pleasure to serve with you again, Chairman Farmer, and with Chairman Carter. Great to see you, and look forward to serving with you in the 112th General Assembly. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Does that get everybody? It's hard to see. I'm looking down through there, and with all the plexiglass, I think we've covered everybody. I see a lot of reflections back this way and that way. So, members, do we have any personal orders or announcements? Anything you'd like to say any member would like to say before we get started today? All right, let's do it. Looks like we have a calendar. Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, will be our first calendar for the year. We have item 1 is House Bill 518. That's by Leader Gant. However, Representative Bricken is carrying that bill. I had a conversation with him earlier, and it's my understanding, Representative, and correct me if I'm wrong, would you like to roll this for 1 week?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I would like to roll it 1 week to get a little better shape.
Very good. Members, do we have any objection to Representative Bricken's request? Seeing none. House Bill 518 will be rolled 1 week. That's a week from today. Be heard next Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Thank you, sir. Members, item 2, that House Bill 477, that was by Chairman White. He's requested that be rolled for 2 weeks. So without objection, House Bill 477 by Chairman White is going to be rolled for 2 weeks. And that leaves us with item 3 on the calendar. That's House Bill 36 by Representative Carringer. And she is present. Members, if we could get a motion in a second. And ma'am, you have a motion in a second, so if you just approach the podium, make sure your little red light's pressed there, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. As you all know, this is my first time up here. So I'm very honored this morning to bring to you all House Bill 36. The purpose of bringing this bill to you all is to be able to provide grants for services in support of physically and sexually abused children. And I think every one of us have this burden in our hearts to protect these children after they've been through such ordeal and trauma, to make sure that we get the best services to them that we can provide. And I think that is our job as state legislators, to make sure that we protect our precious children. And another at my heart is our senior citizens. Those are the two that I feel like that need the most help in our world today. So I have someone here that would like to testify and answer any questions about this particular bill. I think most of you all are going to know him. He's a former state representative from Knox County, and now he works for Child Help, which is located in Knox County, and they are probably one of our biggest child advocacy centers there in Knox County. So, Mr. Chairman, this is what I'm bringing before you all this morning, and we'll go from here.
All right, members, Representative Griffey, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Carringer, for bringing this legislation. I want to go on the record and say I fully support the efforts to fund our, we're called Perkins Centers, where they do the forensic. I've been involved with a number of those on the back end of them. But my concern is that we're currently seeing excess revenues over budgeted tax collections in the neighborhoods of $100 million per month. I would and I think it's imperative that the state of Tennessee fully fund these services. This is critical for law enforcement, protect the victims that have to go through these horrendous situations. And I just have a problem putting the tax increase at the litigation level when I think we have enough funds in the budget that we're already collecting in Tennessee to authorize another tax increase. I would much rather, and I'd advocate, and I'll sign on to any bill, if you want to do a supplemental budget increase of this amount to fund these services throughout Tennessee, I'll happily sign on to that as a co-sponsor. But I just don't feel comfortable doing it as a litigation tax increase. So, but thank you for bringing this, and I thank you for your efforts to support this important work. So thank you.
Chairman Curcio, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I echo everything that my good friend Representative Griffey just talked about, and I think, of course, I don't know because I haven't seen the testimony in advance, but I think any discussion about why you're wanting these funds, you'll be preaching to the choir up here. I think this is officially the amen loft when it comes to helping children who've been abused in this way. So that's certainly not at issue. I think what we've talked about in this committee and in other similar jurisdiction committees over the years is about these litigation taxes specifically. And in fact, the General Assembly requested a TASER report that my good friend Chairman Carter reminded me of. So he may have some things that he wants to say about it, but I'll just mention the fact that it exists. It was published in January of 2017 on this very issue, and so every year, many of us who sit in committees and listen to proposals to send things to TASER to study, and we always wonder, well, do they really look at them? You know, how much burden are we putting on them, and so forth? And they do an incredible job. Here we are on the backside of that process. So now we've asked TASER for a report, and I think we owe it to ourselves and to TASER to listen to them, because folks like Chairman Carter and others spend a lot of time at TASER working on these things. So. Our own experts at TASER, after having spent many months looking at this issue, advised us against these litigation taxes. And again, no one questions the motive as to what we would use the money to pay for. But they talk about how courts should substantially funded from general governmental revenue sources, enabling them to fulfill their constitutional mandates. Court users derive a private benefit from the courts and may be charged responsible fees, partially offset the cost. They talk about how when we add these fines and fees, we really prevent, especially poorer individuals, access to justice. And so when I look at that, then I'm reminded of the Tennessee Constitution, Article 1, Section 17 talks about that all courts shall be open, and every man for an injury done him in his lands, good person, or reputation shall have remedy by due course of law, and right and justice administered without sale, denial, or delay. And therefore, Tennesseans have a constitutional right to access the court system. And I think when we nickel and dime folks, we erode that. So I certainly don't question anything about what you want to fund. The question is this the best way to do it? So because of that, I have always been against litigation taxes, and I would continue that stance today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and glad to see you. You're representing Knoxville very well, and welcome. I know this is your first bill, and so we appreciate that. A couple of things I want to clarify in the bill, and I echo Representative Curcio's comments and concerns about having a litigation tax on top of the already expensive access that we have to our court system. But I do note in the bill that this gives the legislative branch of that particular county the ability by 2/3 whether or not to authorize this additional tax on top of the litigation tax that already exists. And so, in other words, what I think you are asking us to do is simply authorize those counties to levy that tax if they so choose by 2/3 of that legislative body. Am I understanding that correctly?
Representative Carringer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You most definitely are. I want to bring out the fact that this has already been done, but there's only one county in the state of Tennessee that has been doing this now for close to 20 years, and that would be Fentress County. So all we're asking is to have the same ability to be able to do what Fentress County has been doing for almost 20 years, and that is to take it back to the individual counties and let the county legislators be able to vote if they want to do it. And we say $25, they don't have to charge $25. They could charge $10. They could charge $1 or $5 or whatever. That would be left up to the individual counties in the state of Tennessee for their local government to decide if they want to do this and how much they want to do it for. And therefore, the money would go all to the child advocacy centers because they're not getting all of the already fees that we're saying that we're allowing the courts to charge. Our child advocacy centers are not getting, they're getting very little of that. And that's why I have Mr. Smith here to testify whenever you all are ready to really be able to get deeper into this. But we're simply asking that since Fentress County has been doing it, that we offer it to all the counties in the state of Tennessee. I think that's just a fair thing for us to ask, is that all counties leave it up to their local people to make the decision.
Representative Garrett, any follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that explanation, Representative Carringer. But with that to outweigh, I think, and to echo the comments of Representative Griffey and Representative Curcio, I would hope that other avenues at this point could be at least looked upon to see if this can be funded in other ways. Would you be open to potentially either rolling this a couple of times so we can have more discussion on this particular legislation, and maybe we can form it in a better way or seek another path on how we can potentially get this funded? Would that be something that you would be open to?
And just to say to our new member, Ms. Carringer here, that's a decision that you could make now, or you could allow your Mr. Smith to come up and present his testimony, and then that's something you could do afterwards as well. But yeah, you can go ahead and answer the question if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it's something that certainly would entertain the decision to be able to do that. I would like to have Mr. Smith speak today because he, we followed all the rules and had him on the list to be able to speak, but he also took a little tumble down some steps back before Christmas. He's probably going to kill me because I said that. But anyway, he has got to have shoulder surgery tomorrow, so he has to be back for the shoulder surgery. And we thought we were going to be able to do this last week and have time to talk to members and all. And as we all know, that didn't happen. So yes, we definitely can talk about that. I would like for you all to be able to hear Mr. Smith's testimony, and we can go from there. And if that's
Very
good.
Members, anyone else have any questions for Representative Carringer before we go out of session? I believe Chairman Carter, I apologize. All right. We've got a motion. Do I have a second to go out of session? Fair enough. Let's go ahead and do that. We're out of session. Mr. Eddie Smith, familiar to the room. It's good to have you back, sir. Hope you're doing well. And I believe you know the routine. Pull the mic down, make sure the red light's on, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. And before I get started, I'd like to just say, Representative Carter, it is good to see you here. You have been in our thoughts and prayers, and I know you will continue to be. So yes, a lot of the questions you all have asked this morning were a lot of what I was going to start with, and that is around the fact that when you look at our child advocate, are you all fine if I take the mask off while I'm sitting here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just not quite normal still to talk in a mask to a group of people. If you look at the child advocacy centers across the state, they are funded through a contract through DCS. That funding has been flat since 1999. So all child advocacy centers are receiving the same funding today that they were receiving in 1999. And most of us have received our 5-year contract extension. So for the next 5 years, we will continue to receive that same level of funding. So you're talking about 26 years of flat funding. What's happened in just the last 8 years that we've seen across the state is that child abuse investigations have increased. When you look at the forensic interviews conducted by not just Child Help. So I work for Child Help, which is a national organization, has been around for 61 years, fighting across the country and states the pandemic of child abuse nationally. We were actually the ones that helped, Child Help helped spearhead the legislation in 2002 to actually get child advocacy centers in every judicial district in state code. And that's why we have as many as we do. Tennessee was leading the nation then in child advocacy centers in this country. Well, we've got some great partners. Child Help doesn't do it all. We are one of about 52 CACs in the state. But when you look at our numbers, we conduct almost 11,000 forensic interviews, 33,000 therapy sessions last year. But what we're starting to run into is we're running out of the ability to hire more people. So when you look at where our funding comes from, most of us get funding through VOCA, which is the Federal Victims of Crime Act. Congress has not fixed it. We've begged them in the last year. All of us across the country have asked that they fix that. It is running out of money, and it's running out of money very quickly. If Congress doesn't address that, our advocacy centers are going to be looking at a shortfall of millions of dollars. When you talk about adding funding to go through the General Revenue Fund, what happens is that money flows through DCS and it gets added on with a whole lot of regulation and things that have to happen. And then we're at the will of what DCS is asking us to do versus being able to go to our local community and say, well, here's a problem we're seeing in Knox County. We need more mental health therapists. Our funding portion of this, I've spoken with our county commission. They are on board with this fee. In Knox County, because again, we wrote it so that it could only go to child advocacy centers as defined in the TCA, and that also have what's called a CIPA team, a Child Protective Intervention Team, as defined in TCA. And we did that so that no one could just pop up and say they are a, quote, CAC to draw down this funding. We wanted to make sure that this funding that if you all would grant the local communities to have would actually get to helping kids. When we look at what we are planning in Knoxville, one of the greatest needs as we've talked to Children's Hospital is access to trauma-informed. Now, there is a difference between regular mental health counselors.
Time's up, Mr. Smith. We'll have plenty of time for questions and further discussion. Probably going to follow up on everything you had there, but your 3 minutes is up. Members, I have Chairman Carter on the list. Chairman, would you like to go ahead, or would you like me to pass you on down?
Sure is good to see you again in such a worthy role, and I agree with Chairman Curcio. I don't think you can find anyone in here that won't sign a petition to get better funding. I mean, there's nothing more important than what you're doing, and I just appreciate, man, of your characters involved in it. Here is my problem, and if we're going to roll it, I want to tell you what's on my mind before I vote so you can deal with that. We began to have a problem when I first came on the Civil Justice Committee in 2013 with, I remember a $3 litigation tax to put storm windows on the Cott County Courthouse. And what we began to notice is the more that we raise fees, the less the fees are collected. That's what got referred to TASER. What was discovered in that is quite startling, is that if you add this fee, you will collect less money. Now, that does not make sense, but let me give you an example. When I went on the bench in 1995, the average speeding ticket at the state was $71 and the county was $91. When I left, they were both $277 and going up because of add-ons and different things. Now, most of that was added to pay for the operation of the courts. And that's what court costs go for, to fund the courts, so that the citizens aren't taxed to operate the courts. So a litigation tax is a special tax. It has a priority over other taxes. It has to be paid first. It gets paid out first. But it gets very complicated. Because if a man or a woman is, and I'm using all Hamilton County examples here, so if your county's not like this, I understand. But if a person gets a year in jail and goes and pays, they owe $95 a day for their room and board, and they have to pay that before their court costs are paid. They have to pay all of their court costs before they can get their driver's license back. What we discovered in this study, and I think if you read it, although it's 170 pages, so I'd hit the summary first. What we discovered is what we're doing is we have many, many thousands of people in Tennessee now driving without driver's license because of these increasing fees. For example, if a person can't afford to pay $25 and they owe $1,500, does that $25 go to your department? Or does it go to reduce the prior fee? And every clerk will give you a different answer. My clerk says no, that once the fees become stale, that is more than 1 year old, then they go toward just the last in, first applied. Is that correct? Last in applied to the last debt. What it amounts to is one of the last cases I had before I left the bench was a gentleman that I was extremely impressed with. He was a gentleman that was, golly, he was enormous, 6'7", 6'8", probably 400 pounds, and I don't mean an ounce of fat on him anywhere. So he came up and would not be represented by an attorney, and I said, well, Tiny, I can't see your name on your work shirt, but I assume the name is Tiny. And he laughed for a while and said, I've been accused and called everything, but I've never been called Tiny. And so I just really liked this guy. And I said, well, Tiny, you're driving, you have 27 convictions of driving without a driver's license. I must, by statute, put you in jail. And he pounded my bench with that enormous hand. And he said, no, sir, you're not going to put me in jail. And I said, well, Tiny, I need to understand why you would say something like that to a man that has the power to lock you up if you like it or don't like it. And he said, because I have 8 children. Not a one of them has ever eaten any government cheese. No, you're not going to put me in jail. I work every day. Now, I owe court costs, and I can't possibly pay them. I said, well, how much do you owe? $15,500. I got to know, Tiny. And I waived all of those fees I could waive by statute, and I came down to $660 that could not be waived because they were litigation tax. They were priority and they couldn't be waived. He didn't have the money. I agreed to pay it. When I resigned, I had worked for 7.5 months, and I never got him a driver's license. Now, that's the effect we're having on honest, hardworking people. I'll never get over Tiny. Never got him a license. Even offering to pay, I couldn't get it done. So there are all kinds of unintended consequences involved with this. Now, we want these people to have their payments, and God knows you all need the money and it couldn't go to a better place. One of the problems we found in the TISER study is when one of these fees is assessed, the funders say, no, you're funded now. Oh, no, you get funded through court costs. But they don't know whether they're being funded or not. I'm very interested in Fentress County. How much money were they actually funded last year out of this litigation fee? And think about a litigation tax. A litigation tax can only be waived by a pauper's oath. You can waive as a pauper's oath. So a litigation tax has to be paid before the filing of a case, and because it's a litigation privilege tax, for lack of a better term. But what happens when people, their lawyers tell them, which I've told millions of them, you just have to swear you can't afford it. And then it's waived. So the higher we run up the cost, the more pauper's oaths we get. Do you see what we're saying? Now that pauper's oath keeps him or her from having to pay that litigation tax and other fees to file a case, but it doesn't on the back end keep them from having their driver's license suspended. We have an enormous problem in Tennessee with uninsured motorists driving cars. And the primary reason are traffic citations that, like I said, $15,500 something. I was stunned. I had no idea that it would ever get to that. By the way, out of that $15,500, Tiny had never been convicted of a crime other than driving without a license. So I don't know how we do that, but we have to do something fair. And while I certainly want to help you all in every way, I don't want to hurt other things that, while not equal in status to me, certainly are important to me. So if you'll take a look at that and think about it, if this is the answer, the one thing I do like about your bill, which I thought was very thoughtful, was that the county has to approve it by 2/3. And if it's properly explained to the county, they'll realize this money is coming out of their pockets. That $25 goes to them to run the courts. If it's spent out, then they have to fund that with tax money. I know in Hamilton County, 6 years ago, in our county clerk's election for criminal court clerk, a friend of ours ran for that left here and ran for it. And it came out at that time that the back fees owed were somewhere between $47 million and $66 million. And they couldn't get it any closer than that. So when you're taxing people and taxing them to run the court system, and people out there don't understand that if he could collect that $47 million, he would collect it very quickly. But you can't. You've got people that simply can't afford it and their own welfare, and they're driven to welfare frequently because they can't pay these fees and fines and they can't get a driver's license. Then I'm not sure who we've helped and who we've hurt. I'm not sure if the overall impact on our society is good or bad. I'd like to echo the comments of Representative Griffey. We've got the largest budget surplus in the history of Tennessee. Right now is the time to get you all funded and get you funded in a way that will materially affect the outcome of children's lives. And I would certainly carry an amendment to help with that and help sponsor it and do everything I could do. And if you hadn't had a pay increase in 26 years or 29 years or what it was, I don't know. Of course, you're well respected and means a lot for you to be here. But if there was some way to get a more definite funding, then I would certainly be in favor of that. So I'm really torn about this. I'm just really torn. But I think you need to take a look at the impact of this on long term and what it will have. And I would really like to know how much Fentress County is getting a year. Because let's say they're getting $1 million a year. That's $1 million a year the taxpayers are funding. Because that $1 million goes out, the taxpayer has to make up that money. And it's not the criminal paying it, it's the taxpayer paying it. And people that don't understand how it works don't understand that. Unless they have a budget surplus. And we don't have a budget surplus in Hamilton County on our criminal courts. So anyway, well, thank you for coming. It's good to see you again. I hope your shoulder surgery goes well. And I'm still open to listen to this because the need is impossible to ignore. It just is impossible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Carter, for that. Mr. Smith, do you have any follow-up?
I
If you're able
do.
to answer any of his questions or anything you'd like to say about that, you go
I
ahead.
do. A couple of things just to answer a couple of your questions. One, according to the fiscal note, Fentress County received $10,100 last fiscal year on the court fees they collected. Looking at the fiscal note, the entire fiscal note for the entire state, it's a $5.7 million, obviously permissive, that would be collected across the entire state by all the counties if they were to go up to the 25. Again, thinking through some of those things that you brought up, that's why when we wrote it, and I've got the TASER appendix here with all the court fees. And when you look at all of these fees, there's only 2 fees in all of these court litigation taxes that actually go to child advocacy centers. One is in Fentress County and one is in Wayne County. But when you look at even just the sex offense conviction, there's a up to $3,000. When you look at how much of that money actually goes into the Crime Victims Fund, it's $25 of that $3,000 actually goes to the Crime Victim Fund. 3% of that fee goes to the driver education for the DOE. 19% goes to the public defender. More money goes elsewhere other than to helping. So when we're talking about thinking about it, that's why we changed the language. Fentress County says $25. In the amended, we said up to, so that each community could go and decide $25 might be too much of an ask, so that, okay, we can set that at $5, $10, but then it's up to each child advocacy center to go to their county commission to say, here's our need, here's what we're wanting to try and accomplish based on our community, and this is what we're asking you to do. Now, the local legislative body can say no. But then they can also say, yes, this is something we want to do, because funding from, again, the federal level, we know on the state level that we've done what we could, but it wasn't that long ago that we were running budget deficits. So this is a way to try and keep all of those ebbs and flows out of it so that it's happening on a local level, that they can make decisions that's going to best benefit the kids they're serving.
Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Any follow-up, Chairman Carter?
Yeah, thank you for that, Eddie. I knew you'd be fully prepared, and I appreciate that. As I see it, that's 406 speeding tickets, because a criminal case is a speeding ticket, or a speeding ticket is a criminal case, because you can be sentenced up to 30 days in jail for speeding. So the average person like you or I that gets a speeding ticket can probably pay that. I'm just wondering how many cases went through the sessions and the criminal courts, the numbers that went through that. The last year I served on the bench, we had 61,000 cases go through the courts. So I don't know now, 45,000 of those were traffic violations, which I didn't consider cases. We had 45,000 actual criminal cases, but, we had 15,000 actual criminal cases, but we had 45,000 speeding tickets. Probably a lot of those people could afford to pay, people like you and I that got caught speeding and could pay that and send it in through the mail, never went to court, never realized what the money was going for. And that's fine, and I understand that. Do you know if Fentress County reports back each year how much money they're collecting?
Mr. Smith, you recognize.
Yes, I am not for sure, but what I can tell you, based on this fiscal note, according to the Administrative Office of the Courts, 2018-19 statistics, there were 49,148 filings statewide in county circuit courts, 57,390 filings statewide in chancery courts, and 179,987 filings statewide in criminal courts, for a total of 286,525 civil and criminal court filings in the state of Tennessee. Looking at this, there were 505 criminal court filings in Fentress County, and that's where the tax came in. Again, they calculate on 80% of that total tax going back to because of all the people who cannot pay. So there's a 80% calculation figured into that.
Well,
Chairman Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I practiced law for almost 21 years. I never paid a filing fee. Always filed on a pauper's oath because I represented plaintiffs. I knew the insurance company was going to lose, or hopefully I was going to be successful, and they were going to pay that litigation tax at the end. So we filed under a pauper's oath. So out of the filing of 256,000 cases, and I understand that, that's not the issue. The issue is how many people prepaid the litigation fee. And telling me how many were filed doesn't tell me how many were paid. You see what I'm saying?
I
Mr.
do.
Smith, you recognize.
And I don't have an exact answer to that. And speaking with Mike Hammond, who is our county court clerk, he gave me some estimation, which is, when you think about it, because of the formula and everything of how everyone pays and that they have to usually go on payment plans, it's based on, in Knox County, I believe it was 68 cents of every dollar of tax would come back in that given year. So again, we're looking at about $200,000 to $250,000 in Knox County of revenue just for our Child Advocacy Center. That would be different in every single state, so in every different county.
Yeah. Chairman Carter?
Oh, I just want to make the comment. That'd be enormous, and that'd be great, but that, and I'll find out how Hamilton County runs on this. It's a little difficult to ask the clerks how many fees are you not collecting, because they're wondering if you're thinking about running against them.
Yeah. Luckily, I think my clerk knew I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah, I know.
But
Think about how difficult that is to be a clerk and try to collect from people that just don't have the money, and you can't hire enough people to waste time to do all that. So at some point, you have to write it off, and generally the taxpayers just simply don't understand that you can't throw good money after bad. But I'm all for helping fund you in some way, and I'm stunned by the lack of funding. I mean, just stunned. So Congress seems to be a little more liberal this year, and we seem to have the largest budget surplus ever. And if that would be a possibility, then I'd be your greatest supporter.
Very good. Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative and Representative, I appreciate you bringing this legislation. Just a little mentorship note: if they are willing to discuss it after a roll, take the roll. Yeah, but on another note, I think that I'll support the legislation in the form that it's in. I don't like it going up to $25. I think that's a bit much, but I think we need to look at this from the perspective of an investment, members. And when I say the perspective of an investment, is based on the services that are provided by these family support centers, and the fact that with these services, this is an opportunity to provide the intervention early on with these children. That means on the back end, we're going to save a lot of money by cutting the seed out, or the root that may begin to form, that would take these children's norm that they come into life with, that blank slate, and keep it in the form of positive things versus the negative things that will change that norm for that child. And so, for example, we all come into the world as blank slate and happy-go-lucky little baby hugging the leg of our parents. All babies are like that for the most part. right? But somewhere along the way, that norm changes, and it's because of those adverse childhood experiences that these children deal with. Now, I don't know of one child that has come into this world that said, well, babies don't talk, but that wanted to grow up to be a shooter, or grow up to be another abuser, or grow up to be a delinquent. But somewhere along that pathway, there are things that are written on that child's slate, and I can almost guarantee you that the majority of those that, whether they're young, juvenile, or adult citizens that are incarcerated or have been involved in the justice system, is because we missed an opportunity early on to intervene. And that's what these organizations do. And so I think that this is a great investment, however we make the investment, and I'm okay with however we make the investment. I think that, but I also think that we should, move this legislation forward with the amendments or with the ask from the governor in the budget, but also in the form that it's in, just in case we cannot get the money out in the budget or out of the budget from the governor to fund it, or however we were going to fund it, just so that they have this tool in the toolkit in the event that they need it. And so I just want us to really, really give that some consideration, because again, if we intervene with this baby that has been neglected, abused, or seen things that the baby shouldn't have seen other than Baby Shark, then we stand a better chance of that child having as normal of a childhood as they possibly can without ending up in juvenile custody or adult custody. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Parkinson. Mr. Smith, you can follow up to that?
Well, I would just say, to Representative Parkinson's point, if the committee, not this week, but in the subsequent weeks, were to decide you wanted to move forward, we would be willing to ask the sponsor to hold this and not take it all the way to the House floor as we work to try and get with you all funding through other ways through the governor's budget. And again, if that were to fail, this would be a backup to be able to help our local communities and our child advocacy center. So however we get the help, we don't care. It's just the bottom line is when you think about the children we're dealing with, and we have seen this year through COVID, what we're starting to see is some severe abuse where kids were locked away for 6 and 9 months with their abusers. And Representative Parkinson says one thing, and this is what we believe at Child Help, and all of our child advocacy centers believe it. Hurt happens in a relationship, but healing happens in a relationship as well. And that's what all of our CACs are working towards, is helping these children heal through positive relationships.
And thank you for that. Representative Griffey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate where you come with the bill. I would just encourage you to do this as an amended bill and do it as a grant program. I'd support it and co-sign it for $10 million to support the Carl Perkins Centers, the forensic interview centers. But the problem is like Chairman Carter indicated, there's at least, and this is just off the cuff, 50% of the folks that come through criminal court, general sessions, are on probation. They can't pay their $25 a month filing fee, probation fee or whatever. So, and then they get behind on that, and then they're back in court on a violation, and we're just building up the docket for all these people, and a lot of it's just because they don't have enough money. And we need to see real wage growth in America. We need to see folks at the bottom be able to get their wages up. We need to tighten the labor market so that we see real wage growth. And I think you're gonna have unintended consequences by doing it as litigation tax. And I would just encourage a different route to fund the forces. This is critical law enforcement function, what you're asking for regarding the Carl Perkins Centers and dealing with children that have been exposed to sexual abuse and other abuse. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And thank you for being here, Mr. Smith. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chairman Ramsey, you're recognized.
And I like this chapter of Mr. Smith Goes to Nashville. And I appreciate you being here, and I certainly appreciate the sponsor. from the bottom of my heart. These issues usually end up with us petitioning the administration for funding where it should be placed and reminding them of that. But everything else about the bill, I refer to my elegant speakers here. Thank you very much for being here.
Very good. Chairman Carter, you recognize, sir.
One final question. Eddie and I do appreciate you being here. Are you getting any funding from the state? Are we talking about increasing your funding in this year's budget, or do we have to create funding from the state?
So
Well, let me say one thing real quick to hold that thought. Legal had just advised me that this caption is just narrowly, it's just open the litigation tax portion of the code, so that it wouldn't hold it would not hold, this bill would not hold an amendment outside of the scope of litigation tax only. So it's very narrow. So even if we wanted to put an amendment on it for a budget amendment, this caption wouldn't hold it. So go ahead, Mr. Smith.
yeah, and the chairman is correct. We wrote it very narrow just so that, you know, people can't do things that you don't want unintended consequences of. But, you know, we would also love the opportunity to work with you all as we go through to see if there's another bill that we could tag on to increase that funding. Currently, in the way, when you all fund the Department of Children's Services, a portion of that is allocated for child advocacy centers, and each one of them has a different contract, so I can't speak for all their contracts. But again, we've got 5-year contracts with DCS, and usually they pay for one forensic interviewer, and then some very simple things for just funding the Child Advocacy Center, and that's about it. We have to fundraise for the rest of the money, and obviously in a COVID year, for all of us, that has been extremely difficult because all of our fundraising events have had to be canceled. And then when you look at the fact that VOCA is running out of funds, it's just, you know, we lose in this country 5 children a day to child abuse. In 1 month, that's the equivalent of a plane taking off from Nashville Airport and crashing. How long would we allow that to go on before we start grounding planes to save kids? Boeing came out this week and said ground all the planes with that same engine that just fell apart out of Denver. But we're losing a plane load of kids every single month in this country to child abuse. And unfortunately, Washington has other priorities right now. This is not something that is on the forefront of their mind. So we've got to take it on the state level and say, these are our kids. You know, we are dealing with some of the severe abuse. I'll never forget, I had been working for Child Help for about 2 weeks, and this little 4-year-old girl came in, burns all over her body. Grandmother brought her in, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. So in the forensic interview, it was revealed that the mother was using the little girl as her ashtray, putting the cigarettes out on this 4-year-old girl because she was too lazy to walk over and put her cigarettes out. We've had children that have been sexually abused, sex trafficked. That is what we're dealing with in the child advocacy centers. And really what we're asking for is just help us help these kids. Give us every fighting chance to be able to say, you know what, yes, that bad thing happened to you, but we love you, and you can live your life to a God-given potential that is different than what the past that you've been. Your past does not have to dictate your future.
Thank you. And I have next on the list, I have Representative Clemens. He passes. Next on the list, I have Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. And I'm glad you mentioned VOCA because, again, while we all totally agree this needs to be funded, you're asking us basically to set up a state-level VOCA. And what we've seen at the federal level is VOCA doesn't work because folks they're pleading around those cases. They're not the same reason they're not being collected at the federal level, they're not going to be collected at the state level. So I want us to find a real solution to fund this problem, not borrow a system from the feds that has failed year after year after year after year. Because I think Tennessee can and does do it better every single time. Thank you.
Very good. Representative Parkinson, have you next on the list?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I echo the sentiments of my colleague behind me. I do want us to find a real solution for funding this, but I don't want us to stop the bill if we don't find a real solution to funding this. And so, and you know, I believe we can find a real solution to funding it, but let's allow the bill to move in the event that we don't. And I think we could possibly, I don't know, I had to ask the sponsor about reducing those fees a little bit, just in the event that these counties may need this in their toolkit. I would love my family service center to be supported in Shelby County, through a funding mechanism, however we do it. But let's not kill the bill in the event that we don't find the funding mechanism. That's all I'm asking.
Very good. Mr. Smith, do you have any follow-up?
And I appreciate that, Representative Parkinson. I can promise you this. I know the committee wants to roll it just to kind of work on some things, and I want to respect that. I'm not going away, and neither are any of our child advocacy centers. We will be here advocating. So, we will work with Chairman Carter, Chairman Farmer, Representative Carringer, and Representative Curcio, and everyone else to find a way to fund this so that it is, we need a Tennessee solution. Tennessee has been leading the nation in a lot of good areas, and I think this is one that we could really set the mark. Again, we led the nation in creating child advocacy centers in every judicial district. That's now spread to a few other states. Let's find a solution to how we can fund them on a sustaining method, and really that's what we're here asking, and this was one way that we found it to be able to do it in the short term. So with that, I will end, and thank you all so much for the time this morning to be here.
Very good. Members, anyone else have any questions for Mr. Smith before we go back into session? All right, seeing none, and thank you for your time, sir. Appreciate you coming up here. All right, we're back into session. Representative Carringer, if you want to come back up to the podium, and if you'd like to have any closing remarks or anything you'd like to say. I think, from what I've heard today, I think what everyone's saying, what's been said and what's been told back is that we're here to we want to provide help and services to any of these kids that we can. But we want to rely on and maintain a consistent flow of funds to do this, and that maybe adding a litigation tax may not be something that would be consistent in order to maintain the level of funding that this may need. As Representative Griffey and Chairman Carter said, that we are sitting on a budget surplus, and that's something hopefully the governor's office is listening to this hearing right now, and basically heard from 5 members of this committee, maybe every member of this committee said, hey, we think you need to add this into your budget. Myself and several other members of this committee are going to sign on to a budget amendment asking Governor Lee to fund this reliable source of funding to help these kids not have cigarettes put out on them, help them have a life, as Representative Parkinson said, give them a chance to have a future, because there's not a child that comes into this world wanting to end up in jail, end up in prison. And that's exactly where we start, because a lot of these kids don't have families. They don't have the support that we, probably most of us, were lucky and fortunate and blessed by God to have growing up. So you can believe me when I say that I think every member on this committee wants this to happen, but we want to have it happen in a responsible way, that we know where this money's going. And we unfortunately, we just can't rely on folks to, that it's already in a bad financial position to fund this. So with that said, ma'am, I wasn't trying to step on your toes there, but just however you'd like to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the members of this committee. And I thoroughly know and believe from sitting here today that every one of you all have our children right here in our hearts. And we want to take these children, we can only speak for the ones in the state of Tennessee because that's the ones we represent, but we all want to make sure that these children that are put in these situations from nothing that they've done, and I just want to echo what our Chairman Farmer said, we are all blessed. My husband and I say all the time, why were we so fortunate to be given the parents that we both have? And that children do not get that decision when they're born. They do not get to pick who their parents are. And so being a parent of 2 grown kids and being a grandmother to 3 grandchildren, it's heartbreaking to see what our kids are growing up and living in. So I appreciate every one of y'all's comments, and I appreciate your sincerity because it's real. and I feel that. So we wanted to bring this to the attention of everyone so that we can make a difference and help these children. So however we can to get the funding, and I'm fully on board with asking the governor to come out and support it. And I've worked in civil court and child support and all, so I know exactly, you know, what you're talking about. I was also in garnishments, so I saw how all the litigation tax were broken down. And, you know, I mean, I've been known to do it. I get a $2 garnishment check and sit there and put like 3 cents in areas. So I completely understand all that and everything that's been said, and I respect everything that's been said in here, and I appreciate you all so much for really letting us bring this to a full discussion this morning. And if we need to roll it, I think that is very much okay with Mr. Smith and myself. So, but I want to echo what Representative Parkinson said, that we want to try to make this work, whichever way we need to go. And so I'm looking for you all for your advice and leadership. So,
Very good. Members, do I have a motion to roll this for 2 weeks?
I so move.
Very good.
thank
House
you.
Bill 36 by Representative Carringer is rolled for 2 weeks. And members, I had, just to follow up, that concludes our calendar for today. Appreciate the discussion and insight. It was very good. I had missed 3 things on the front end about the rules on the committee. To file an amendment, send it as an email to the distribution list of that committee located in the global address list. And I believe that's on dashboard, okay? You folks probably already know that. The email must come from either you or your assistant's email, okay? And staff and members cannot live stream committees. Of course, I think we've talked about that, and I'm confident everybody's going to respect that rule of the committee. So with that said, thank you, everyone, and we'll, with a motion to adjourn for next week, that's what we'll do. Okay, thank you.